Mysterious+Cruel Immortal Cultivation+Old 6+ Behind the Scenes, Mysterious Immortal Road, Non-Dao Immortal Road, Mysterious, Immortal Road, Fishing Man, updated simultaneously, you have to pay various costs to cultivate immortality. Grandpa, I will directly optimize my martial arts and cultivate immortals without any cost. If I don't become an immortal, who will become an immortal? Who else? Who else? Li Qing glanced askance at the sky and howled up. The end of the Tang dynasty is approaching. Endless monsters descend, sparking endless slaughter. In the mortal world, Taoism, Buddhism, Confucianism, demons, ghosts, and various schools of thought crisscross the world. The immortal path is in the human world, but what Li Qing, who came from another world, saw was billions of bones and despair beneath the immortal path. Are they immortals, demons, Buddhas, Confucian scholars, ghosts, demons, or various schools of thought? Li Qing was stunned. The statue in front of me vaguely revealed an infinitely terrifying monster existing in the underworld. Is this a cultivation of immortality or a strange cultivation? Li Qing, who was cold in her heart, looked at the terrifying and strange sky. Chapter 1. Kexi cultivates immortals, did he break the precepts? You are listening at novelfull.audio. During the Tang Dynasty, Qingshi County, Huanglong County, Beizhou. In the Flower Moon study, Li Qing was carefully organizing every book in the study. Holding a feather duster in his hand, he kept sweeping the bookshelf, sweeping away the dust on it. Li Qing, a native of the earth, has traveled to this Tang dynasty for 10 years. Now he is a 15-year-old boy, with an ordinary face and a height of 6 feet. His eyes are also slightly lively. I have been staying here ever since I was picked up by Mr. Huayu in the wind and rain. From being at a loss at the beginning to becoming accustomed to it now, Li Qing has become an ordinary person from the Tang dynasty. Because he was young and had no survival ability, he could only live in the Flower Moon study. When he first came into contact with a book, he discovered something resembling a golden finger. He has a jade tablet in his mind, on which all the knowledge from books he has read and touched will come to mind. These knowledge will be changed by the jade plate, refining the essence, removing the dross, and becoming a new book. At first, he was pleasantly surprised, but over time, he found it very helpless. Although knowledge is revised, understanding it does not necessarily mean that it can be applied. For example, the book he read, The Doctrine of the Mean, explains the ways of Confucianism. After being modified on a jade board, it is only an ancient book and cannot provide substantial assistance to his life. It just made him understand more truths. Compared to the knowledge taught by Earth, this knowledge is more about the way to behave and do things, which has given him some energy cultivation skills. Organizing the books, Li Qing quickly finished today's cleaning work. He arrived at the corner of the bookshelf, where there were many new books that Mr. Huayu had bought from a bookseller in another city. Li Qing opened them as usual and placed a book on the bookshelf in categories. When he comes into contact with these books, the knowledge inside always silently appears on the jade board. As he was placing the books, his face suddenly froze, and a new change appeared in the jade tablet in his mind. My heart trembled slightly, what's going on? He quickly put away all the books in his hand and then quickly arrived at the store door, sitting on the small stool on the left side of the store door. My thoughts focused on the jade tablet in my mind. At this moment, a strange content appeared on the jade board. Old version, blood refining technique, category. Foundation building technique, cultivation method. 9 types of spiritual essence and blood are required. Writing the blood curse on the body, experiencing the hardships of refining the body with the blood curse, can extract the essence of the blood channel from any living organism to strengthen the source and complete the foundation building. Talent skill. Bleeding. Touching any wound will cause continuous bleeding. Cost. Adhere to the rules of meat and fish, breaking the rules will gradually alienate and become strange. New version. Essence and Blood Technique, Category. Foundation Building Technique, Cultivation Method. Use your own essence and blood to write an improved blood spell on your body, lock in and dissipate your essence, refine your essence, and complete the foundation building process. Talent Skill. Bleeding, touching any wound will cause continuous bleeding. Cost. None. These words emit a faint glow of blood, unlike all the books of the past. Building a foundation. Essence and blood, blood curse. Essence and Qi. Countless thoughts flashed through Li Qing's mind, and he felt a little excited all over. Is this the world of cultivating immortals? Is there a way to cultivate immortals here? At this moment, his mind was filled with ecstasy. He had thought he would be too ordinary to grow old, but he didn't expect that God would give him such a big surprise. Just as he was filled with joy, he suddenly noticed the cost item in the old version of the martial arts. Shouting the rules of meat and fish. Breaking the rules will become strange. Isn't this the world of cultivating immortals? How can breaking a ring turn into something strange? A strange expression appeared on his face, and a familiar feeling rose in his heart, very similar to the plot of the K-series novels he had read in his past life. Damn it, this isn't the world of Kexi cultivation, is it? Li Qing felt a chill in his heart. This world of cultivating immortals is too terrifying. If one is not good, the sand value will go crazy, and if one is not good, it will become a monster. My thought changed again, however, it seems that my jade tablet can modify the technique to become a technique without any cost. At least it's okay for now. His face flashed strangely, and he had already decided to practice this modified technique in his heart. I don't want to continue this life that has been going on for decades. I don't want to be a commoner for life in this cannibalistic world. There was a hint of firmness in her eyes, and Li Qing made up her mind. Li Qing, a slightly indifferent voice sounded in his ear. Li Qing's heart skipped a beat and quickly stood up, speaking loudly. Sir, I'm here. Jotted into the store. A scholar in a green robe slowly walked out. He had a face like a crown of jade, handsome and graceful, with a 1-inch beautiful beard on his chin. He was a scholar who had read poetry and books extensively. This person is Mr. Huaiyue, the owner of this Huaiyue study, who picked up Li Qing from the wind and rain 10 years ago. His gaze fell on Li Qing, and he said coldly, "This is a drop of money. Go to the market to buy an old hen and come back." "Yes, sir." Li Qing took the money and put it in his pocket, quickly leaving the Flower Moon study. Qingshe County is a large county with a population of 50,000. Mainly relying on agriculture and the northern Xinjiang mountains, forests, and mining industry 5 miles away. The people here are relatively wealthy, as long as they work hard, everyone can make a living. Arriving at the market, it was still in the morning. Many nearby farmers, hunters, and small vendors have arrived here with yesterday's harvest. Li Qing carefully strolled around a few times, selecting a sturdy old hen and some yams for stewing chicken, and then spent all the money in his hand. Walking towards the Flower Moon study while the old hen was crowing wildly. Entering the Huaiyue study, one can immediately see Mr. Huaiyue sitting behind a desk. He looked at the book in his hand, with a faint smile on his face, seemingly intoxicated. Li Qing carried the old hen and walked towards the back hall, heading straight to the kitchen. I have been living here for 10 years and have long become accustomed to Mr. Huaiyu's habits. This person is an old scholar who is not interested in anything except reading and taking care of his study. Most household chores are completed by Li Qing. In the blink of an eye, it was evening. Li Qing cooked chicken soup, served a bowl, and arrived at Mr. Huaiyu's room. Because he was holding soup in his hand, he walked very slowly and there was almost no sound under his feet. Just as I was about to knock on the door, a strange sound suddenly came from inside. Kaka barked. This seemed to be some kind of chewing sound, and Li Qing's heart inexplicably trembled slightly. Be verbose, the eerie sucking sound rang out again, and Li Qing's instinctive hair stood on end. His gaze turned to the room, with black lights and no sight of what Mr. Huayu was doing in the crack of the door. Isn't it a bit strange to eat inside without even lighting up the lights? Thinking of what he saw in blood refining technique today, his heart suddenly jumped. Meaty. Breaking the rules. Strange. It is clear that the knowledge I acquired unintentionally was recorded in a new book brought back by the Taoist priest Huayu. Why are books in that pile of new books? Li Qing felt countless contradictions. Did Mr. Huayu practice the blood refining technique? And he broke the precept. Chapter 2. Cultivation Techniques and Blood Curse Body Refining. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Looking at the chicken soup in his hand, Li Qing's scalp tingled. A hint of fear appeared in his eyes, and his whole body involuntarily trembled slightly. At that moment, the door suddenly opened and Mr. Huayu's face appeared in front of him with indifference. A strange faint bloody smell penetrated Li Qing's nose. Li Qing's head was about to explode, and her hair stood up, as if she had encountered some kind of huge danger. Why don't you knock on the door when you're here? Mr. Huayu looked at him coldly. Looking up and down, Li Qing felt like she was being targeted by a venomous snake, with goosebumps all over her skin. In a moment of urgency, Li Qing quickly smiled and said, I just arrived. Before I could knock on the door, sir, I opened it. I have already cooked the chicken soup. Mr. Huayu scrutinized him, and the backyard became quiet. Li Qing had a pleasing smile on her face, and there was no trace of anything unusual. Respectfully handed over the chicken soup, sir, should I bring it to you, or? Just give it to me, Mr. Huayu said with a sudden smile on his lips. Speaking, he took the bowl from Li Qing's hand. At the moment when Li Qing received the bowl, his heart kept sinking, cold and sinking straight to the bottom of the valley. Mr. Huayu looked at him with a smile on his face and said, you can also go to the kitchen and serve a bowl. It's time to grow up and eat more. Only by eating well can one grow well. Li Qing quickly nodded and smiled beside him, thank you very much for your reward, sir. Quickly turned around and walked towards the kitchen, looking very happy. After Li Qing turned around, Mr. Huayu's eyes and face became extremely cold, and he kept watching Li Qing's disappearing figure. Bang! The door was closed, and the room once again heard eerie chewing sounds, as well as the sizzling sound of drinking soup and deep laughter. Grow well, hee, grow well, the taste will be better. In the kitchen, Li Qing stood by the water, looking at her face through the reflection of the basin. A pale face, an ordinary face, thrown into the crowd without anyone paying attention. At the age of 15, he was just a teenager in his past life, but now he is an adult. Ordinary families have even gone down to work. My whole body was trembling, and bean-sized cold sweat rolled down. It was so dangerous just now, I almost couldn't hold my tension. These 10 years of books are not for nothing. My energy cultivation skills are really amazing. I think we can handle that situation without blushing or panting. I should have already concealed it from him. But I can't stay here anymore. I have to leave, otherwise I'm afraid I'll die here. He had already realized the problem, the eerie smell of blood and the sound of chewing. Mr. Huayu was eating raw food in his room. As for whether it is a human or an animal, it is unknown. But can I leave? I feel like that guy should already be following me. Only an improved version of the essence and blood technique can save me. Thinking of this is like grabbing a life-saving straw. Li Qing quickly focused her mind on the jade plaque and carefully watched the content of essence and blood technique. At the same time, he also filled himself with a bowl of chicken soup, poured a bowl of rice over it, and quickly started eating. The cultivation method clearly states that it is important to cut off one's loss of essence and energy, in order to cultivate the method. Grinding a knife does not delay the woodcutter. I spent half an hour studying eating all the hens, as well as 2 bowls of rice. Li Qing's stomach was very full, and she already had a rough idea in her heart. The most important steps of this essence and blood technique are divided into 2 parts. Step 1, the improved blood curse requires one's own hard work to write the spell on the body. The spell has a total of 3,000 words and can be written anywhere on the skin of the body, as long as it is continuous. After writing the blood curse, you need to recite the spell from beginning to end to activate it. Step 2, endure the pain of blood curse cultivation. Only after overcoming the transformation of the body by the blood curse can one truly enter the cultivation and continuously accumulate essence. The essence will integrate into the blood and circulate throughout the body along the blood vessels, forming a circulation around the world and nourishing the body to strengthen its original source. There is also a small technique in essence and blood technique. Transforming blood, which requires consuming essence to use. This small skill falls on the enemy, and as long as there is any wound on the enemy's body, blood will continuously gush out of it, unable to heal naturally, and eventually the blood will run out and die. Quickly tidying up the kitchen, he returned to his room with a small bowl and a kitchen knife. There is no oil lamp in his room, which is not something that a small study assistant can enjoy. At this moment, the sky was slightly dim, and the afterglow of the setting sun was still in the distance. Barely through the papery window, there was still some light. Li Qing took off his shirt and quickly cut his index finger with a kitchen knife, dripping blood and falling all into a small bowl. 10 fingers connected to the heart, causing a tingling sensation in the fingers, quickly filling half of the small bowl. Stopping the dripping of blood, Li Qing immediately began to write an improved blood curse on his body. He took out a small brush, dipped it in blood, and began to write vigorously. 3,000 words, even just copying from the jade tablet in my mind, requires a lot of time and energy. 3,000 words took him over an hour, and even his blood began to solidify before he could finish writing. There is no gap left on the front of the body. The wounds on his 10 fingers were constantly tingling, and he exhaled a deep breath, with a hint of determination flashing on his face. This is the last step. Losing blood, in this situation, he had to write 3,000 words on his body under the dim light, and his mental and physical strength were almost at their limit. He sat slightly on his own bed, slowly closed his eyes, and began reciting the mysterious blood curse on the jade board in his mind. Infinite true blood, paving the way with blood, essence entering the bloodstream. Spells filled his mouth one by one, with a deep but exceptionally clear voice echoing slowly in his bedroom. After an unknown amount of time, he finished reciting the 3,000-word mantra. The blood spell on his body emitted a faint red light, as if he had life, and began to spread on him. Every corner of my body, up and down, is shrouded in this scripture, connected like a network. Upon closer inspection, from the first word to the end of the last word, the scripture resembles a long, bloody snake covering his entire body. The scripture permeated into his body, seeming to seep into his blood vessels, causing unimaginable excruciating pain throughout his body. Li Qing's eyes protruded, with blood all over them. Upon closer inspection, there seemed to be something eerie wriggling on the blood vessels, as if it were the brilliance of the blood curse text. The pain made it impossible for him to make a single sound. At this moment of pain, a figure silently appeared outside the door. Dong dong dong. Chapter 3. Crazy Blade, Racing for the Way. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The sudden knocking on the door made Li Qing, who was struggling in pain, sink in her heart. A cold wave rushed straight from the soles of the feet towards the forehead. Sweating profusely, he nervously looked towards the direction of the door, his eyes bloodshot. The physical pain seems to have become less important. A crisis of death seems imminent. Mr. Huayu's indifferent voice rang outside. Li Qing, have you slept yet? The voice was calm, but when it landed in Li Qing's ear, there was a chilling feeling. What does this sound seem to be suppressing? Li Qing's body is undergoing intense changes, but he dare not say a word, just tightly covering his mouth. Dong dong dong. There was another knocking outside the door, and Li Qing slowly stood up, enduring the excruciating pain emanating from his body. You can't wait here to die. He struggled to move, took a few steps to the table, and picked up a kitchen knife. At this point, he was covered in blood-colored text, which now only had a faint trace, as if it had completely sunk into his body. He stood behind the door, holding the kitchen knife tightly in his hand, his physical pain almost blurring his mind. But the will to survive supported him, and there was a bloodthirsty hunter outside the door who might rush in at any time. Li Qing held his knife in both hands, his whole body in pain, involuntarily trembling, and a wave of violence surged in his heart, as if he wanted to destroy everything. Damn it, come on, I'll kill you, I'm afraid of a ball. Li Qing's eyes were crazy, and her entire face seemed to be twisted. The voice outside the door became increasingly deep, open it. Open the door. Roaming and rumbling. Open the door for me. Ah, the voice became increasingly hoarse, completely changing to another voice. Rumble. The door latch was knocked open by a tremendous force. A figure rushed in, and at this moment, under the influence of danger and pain, Li Qing's eyes flashed with a hint of blood, and he crazily slashed down. A bloody radiance had already covered the kitchen knife in his hand at some point. A tremendous force pierced into the opponent's back. Ah! A fierce voice sounded, and a burst of bright red blood gushed out from the opponent's wound. The innate skill of essence and blood technique. Bleeding. The blood splattered all over Li Qing's face. The sharp pain all over the body suddenly disappeared, as if all the pain had been released with the previous blow. A force surged in his body, and Li Qing's head cleared. The figure spraying blood suddenly turned around. A ferocious face looked at him, it was no longer a human face. Fierce facial features, skin almost bursting, covered in blood vessels, and mouth full of fangs spitting out. At this point, Mr. Huayu had reached almost 9 feet, with his body bare and filled with countless blood vessels. Li Qing was full of excitement, turned around and ran towards the outside of the study. With a loud shout, "There's a monster! Killed!" A loud sound echoed through the night sky. People in a radius of tens of zhang could hear this sharp cry. Ah! I'm going to kill you! Li Qing, ah! Mr. Huayu roared and chased after him, with countless blood gushing out from behind, and his breath rapidly weakening. The swollen body shrinks at a visible speed to the naked eye. At this moment, Li Qing was moving like a rabbit, almost using all her strength to nurse and rushing straight towards the backyard. That was the place where the firewood was piled up. He almost jumped up, stepped directly on the firewood, and then jumped out of the wall. A huge figure behind him had already been caught. Pushi. The sound of clothes breaking, accompanied by a burning pain from behind. Got hit. Li Qing fell from mid-air and landed with both feet, slightly rolling forward on one side of his body to resolve the impact of the landing. Get up and rush towards the distance, this is the small street behind the study. The sprint of spirits rising from the dead, he could no longer care about anything else. That kind of monster, giving him a knife behind the back is already considered luck. Facing each other head on. Are you joking? A sound of footsteps echoed around, followed by a heavy landing sound and a terrifying roar from behind. Kill you. I'm going to kill you. Li Qing's scalp tingled when she heard the roar behind her and the sound of heavy objects falling to the ground. At this point, he had rushed to the end of the alley, and the street was ahead. His voice roared wildly. There's a monster. There's a monster. Help. Running wildly, shouting, he had already rushed onto the street. At this moment, the sky was already dim and it was time for a curfew. There are hardly any people on the street. There are only patrol attendants and night watchmen. With a burning pain behind his back, Li Qing rushed into the street and was surprised to find that Mr. Huayu seemed to have not caught up again. Roaming and rumbling. A huge explosion suddenly sounded from behind. Li Qing couldn't help but look back, and a figure wrapped in silver radiance collided heavily with a huge object. The other party was directly hit by a huge force on the street. In the silver radiance, there was a man wearing armor. He was shrouded in a silver hue, like a silver iron figure. Li Qing didn't know what it was, but he knew that now was the best time for him to escape. Without any hesitation, I crawled into another alley next to me and rushed towards a direction in my memory. Ah! Like the roar of a dying beast, a desperate roar came from behind. Li Qing ran, feeling a chill rising in her heart. This is a supernatural world, it's really weird. In the county town under curfew, there are night patrols at any time, and Li Qing must quickly find a safe place. The sharp pain on his back made him breathe a bit quickly, and it took him a while to reach behind a dilapidated house. This house is filled with traces of being burned down, and it is the same house that caught fire last year. Fortunately, there was no one living in this house, and after the fire was extinguished, there was no one to manage it. Li Qing stumbled into the ruins, came to a corner, and sat down in one gulp. Deeply exhale 2 mouthfuls of turbid air, sit cross-legged, with 5 hearts up, silently feeling one's own body. He silently recited the essence and blood technique in his heart, and he could clearly feel a stream of essence flowing in his own bloodline. This essence is very weak, but it actually exists. The essence followed the blood vessels on the body and quickly flowed throughout the body. He can feel the piercing pain behind him, and as his essence flows, he emits a faint itching. After undergoing the blood curse body refining, his perception of the body has completely surpassed the past. When you close your eyes, you can clearly sense your body's state. The wound on the back consists of 5 paw marks, each lasting at least 10 centimeters. Fortunately, the wound is not deep. At this moment, these wounds are rapidly healing, with a faint red essence hovering over them. Is this essence too powerful? How could this wound heal so quickly? Click. Chapter 4. Inferring danger and running immediately. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Outside the ruins, there was a sudden sound of branches being stepped on and broken. A dense sound of footsteps kept ringing out. Li Qing, who had just been immersed in cultivation, felt a slight jump in her heart. A rapid and loud voice sounded. "Quick, there's an accident over there. Hurry up, don't fall off the chain with me," a rough voice shouted. A group of people rushed by, and a thought flashed through Li Qing's mind: people from the yamen. At this moment, the wound behind him had initially healed, and he quickly took off his clothes. Looking at the bloodstains on his clothes, a hint of solemnity appeared on his face, and he quickly wiped all the bloodstains off his back and face. Looking down at his slightly white skin, he frowned slightly and said, "No, it's too conspicuous." Watching the ground covered in soil and ash, without hesitation, he lay down on the ground, rolling back and forth. In just a few minutes, he was like a black charcoal, and his skin could no longer be seen as fair. I looked at my body and said, "It's not enough." He laid his clothes flat on the ground and quickly dyed them dirty black. With a forceful tear towards the blood-stained part, a large hole was torn out from the back of the clothes. I carefully checked my clothes and quickly draped them over my body, looking completely like a beggar. After thinking for a moment, he took off his headscarf, messed up his hair, and applied some dirt to it. At this moment, he had completely transformed into a beggar, and no one would recognize him. Although it is unclear who was killed halfway, it is highly likely related to the official world. Mr. Huayu is basically finished, the flower moon study may also be searched. My traces will definitely be discovered by careful servants as well. I haven't collected the blood bowl from practicing essence and blood technique yet, and there are still blood stains on my brush. If the officials in this world also know the way of cultivation, they are highly likely to suspect me of being a cultivator. Secondly, the original practice of essence and blood technique was called refining blood technique. The content of the martial arts may not seem very serious, as it requires the blood of several creatures, as well as guarding the precepts, which poses a strange danger. Mr. Huayu didn't keep his precepts, that's why he became like that. So if I were the official of this world and knew that there were still people practicing such dangerous spells, then I would definitely be wanted. Either recruit or execute. I'm afraid it's highly likely that I'll be executed directly. The magnificent day passed, and Li Qing had completely awakened his modern thinking. In the era of internet knowledge explosion, as long as you are a normal modern person, you have a considerable grasp of all kinds of myths, stories, novels and ancient information. Most people will speculate on ancient deeds with the greatest malice. The power of imperial power, the power of government, and the power of rural gentry, Li Qing never believed that he might have any good fate. The most terrifying thing is that this place is still an extraordinary world. Taking a deep breath, Li Qing's eyes narrowed slightly. I'm afraid I can't leave tonight. If there's a chance tomorrow morning, make sure to slip out. But I need to go somewhere else. I may have left bloodstains along the way. If it's someone who is proficient in tracking, if there's any unique power, then I won't be able to run away. Feeling extremely uneasy in his heart, Li Qing gritted his teeth and pondered slightly, where else can Qingshe County avoid? Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration and thought of a good place. If everything goes smoothly, maybe we can go out tonight. He quickly arrived at the back of the ruins, which was a small alley. Under the dim moonlight above, Li Qing quickly headed towards her destination. Half an hour passed in the blink of an eye, and he arrived at the north of Qingshe County. There is a river in the north of the city, which leads all the way to the outside and is the main water source inside the city. However, this river originates from the Pujiang River that runs through Beizhou. This river is called Qinghe. Although it runs through the entire Qingshe County, when it passes through the city wall, there is an iron fence below, blocking anyone from entering or exiting. But now the Tang dynasty is basically in its final years. Weakened military equipment and rampant corrupt officials. Qingshe County is located on the border and has always been far away from the emperor. However, due to the distance of bureaucrats and gentry from the center of power, the entire Qingshe County has not undergone significant changes since the founding of the dynasty, and has instead formed a stable structure. But the military expenses in Qingshe County were still allocated from the Tang dynasty, although they have been decreasing in recent years. Eating and cuddling on top, leaving very little for military equipment and soldiers. This has resulted in various weapons and equipment in Qingshe County being very outdated. The iron fence along the river in the city has also been in disrepair for a long time. Many smugglers in the city enter and exit from there. This is already a secret publicly disclosed by some gang members and lower-class members in the city. Li Qing also heard the intelligence by chance while listening to the opera next to the tea house. At this moment, he had arrived at the riverbank, in the pitch-black river, where he could only hear the sound of clattering and could not see anything. He quickly headed towards the exit along the riverbank. Another 15 minutes later, he arrived near the city wall. He is located on a small road by the river, with a row of old houses on the right. It is about 5 zhang away from the city wall. There is nothing in this area, specifically set up as a blank space to prevent ghosts from sneaking into soldiers stationed in the city during wartime. The city wall of the county town is about 3 meters high, and there is a torch every 3 meters above it, which can illuminate the inside and outside areas. We can't go over here anymore, we have to go into the water. Taking a deep breath, Li Qing quietly climbed down the riverbank, grabbed the bank with both hands, and slowly lowered her body. His height is about 6 feet, plus his arms can reach 8 feet, and his feet have already come into contact with the river water. I took a deep breath, released my hands, and instantly fell into the river. The icy river water was piercing, and Li Qing couldn't help but shiver. He waved his hands and floated out of the water. The water in the river was not turbulent, and he easily floated up. He grabbed the gap on the shore with both hands and moved forward bit by bit. Soon he arrived at the exit under the city wall, where there was a steel fence. But Li Qing knew that there was a corroded hole underneath the iron fence. Just as he was about to dive underwater, rapid footsteps suddenly sounded from the shore. Li Qing felt a chill in his heart, took a deep breath, and instantly dived into the water. The underwater was pitch black, and a series of flames lit up on the shore. The trace will break here. It must have gone into the water. Go down and search for it immediately. A sharp voice sounded, filled with a cold and gloomy atmosphere. Chapter 5. Escape from Water, Ringing in the Rain. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The sound from the shore had already entered the water, and Li Qing grabbed the iron fence with both hands and quickly felt and moved underwater. He knows he can't stay here anymore. Fortunately, within a few seconds, the damaged area was found and carefully drilled through the washing water. A constant sound of falling into the water had already sounded from behind. Ma Lu crawled out of the damaged fence, and Li Qing quickly surfaced, then climbed along the iron fence to the riverbank outside the city. He didn't let himself drift with the water, and no one knew what was going on in the water at night. One bad thing might lead to death. The cold and piercing river water made him tremble slightly all over. He firmly grasped the various protrusions on the riverbank and drifted forward. The sound behind him has faded away, and the flames on the city wall are becoming increasingly dim. At least half an hour had passed, and Li Qing was shivering with cold. Finally, he arrived at a gentle section of the riverbank. The riverbank is covered in soil and pebbles, and some contours can be vaguely seen under the dim moonlight. Take off your clothes directly and wring the moisture out with force. Li Qing panted heavily and walked towards the upper part of the riverbank. He wants to find a place, at least to light a fire and dispel the coldness in his body. A faint cold wind blew at night, and Li Qing shivered all over, panting heavily, his eyes carefully scrutinizing under the moonlight. He landed next to a field, which seemed to be filled with green melons. Suddenly, Li Qing's eyes lit up and he saw a shed next to the farmland. That is a place for farmers to cool off in the summer. Quickly walked over, there was a cooling board bed in the shed, with a layer of grass mat on top. Li Qing hung his clothes on the pergola, while he himself sat on the grass mat. I took a heavy breath, looked left and right, exhaled heavily, and saw a small pile of picked green melons next to me. As soon as his eyes lit up, he quickly walked over, picked up one, and threw it towards the ground. Papa, the green melon was smashed, so he picked it up and broke it open before eating it directly. The sweet green melon made him breathe a deep sigh of relief. That night was also a heart-wrenching experience, where he practiced a blood curse to refine his body and was chased by Mr. Huayu. He practiced martial arts to heal his injuries and then went diving to escape. He felt that his physical strength was almost completely exhausted. The green melon was quickly eaten clean by him, and Li Qing's eyelids trembled. He couldn't hold on anymore, and his head was dizzy. He lay down on the grass mat and fell asleep. This sleep was heavy, and Li Qing was completely unconscious. After an unknown amount of time, the sound of chickens crowing outside. Oops oops, the sound of roosters woke Li Qing up, and he suddenly sat up, panting heavily. A hint of fear flashed across his face. Just now he had a nightmare, dreaming that Mr. Huayu was chasing him. Just as he was about to be caught, the sound of roosters woke him up from his dream. Li Qing stood up from the grass mat, his stomach growling loudly. He casually touched his clothes and they were already dry. Standing up, he took off his clothes and draped them over his body, revealing a patch of his back. Helplessly shrugging his shoulders, he picked up 2 more green melons from the side, looked left and right, and saw an official road. I took a deep breath and said, "Let's leave here first." Looking at the pergola, he shook his head and said, "I'm sorry, I owe your family one favor by picking 3 green melons." I'll pay it back in the future. In Qingshe County, the county magistrate had a gloomy face and sat below a man in armor. Beside them stood some yamen runners, all with iron-blue faces and panda eyes, who looked like they hadn't slept all night. Captain Li, the incident last night has been thoroughly investigated. Mr. Huayu from the Flower Moon study, I don't know where he got the blood demon sex blood refining technique. I went crazy and became strange. There is also a clerk named Li Qing in his shop who is missing. It is highly likely that they have already escaped from Qingshe County. I have issued a sea arrest warrant. If there is any news, I will notify the Demon Removal Hall as soon as possible. Captain Li is the same person who took action last night. At this moment, his face turned gloomy. The blood refining technique is a technique deliberately passed down by the blood demon sect. Appearing in Qingshe County means there must be people from the blood demon sect here. I'm afraid Li Qing is just a small character. Now I need everyone in the Yamen to cooperate with me and immediately search the entire Qingshe County. All outsiders must be thoroughly investigated. The Qingshe County magistrate's face looked a bit ugly, but he nodded and said, "Okay. Captain Wang, personnel from Class 3 will be promoted, and everyone will obey Captain Li's orders." A middle-aged man with a beard all over his face quickly stood up and said, "Yes, sir." Captain Li nodded and slightly arched his hand, saying, "Thank you very much for your cooperation, County Magistrate." The Qingshe County Magistrate nodded slightly and said, "It should be." After speaking, with a gloomy face, he turned around and returned to the back hall. Captain Li looks only 20 years old and has a very majestic appearance. Looking at Sheriff Wang, "Call someone and follow me out." Constable Wang's face darkened and he said, "Yes." Wow. Summer rain always comes so suddenly. Roaming and rumbling. The sky is shrouded in dark clouds, with lightning and thunder roaring. King Shanling is a continuous mountain road and a 50-meter-long small valley, which is a necessary path for Qingshe County to connect with the outside world. All freight that comes and goes must go from here. At this moment it was pouring rain and the ground was muddy. Li Qing, soaked all over, came to a protruding rock to take shelter from the rain. The canyon was almost submerged by raindrops, with the sound of raindrops all around. Under heavy rain, the visibility did not even exceed 10 meters. Li Qing looked at her wet body with a gloomy expression on her face. "I'm really unlucky. I was wet all over in the river last night, and now I've been drenched in rain again. Is this asking me to get wet to the end?" With a helpless sigh, Li Qing took off his clothes and hung them on the protruding rock next to him. Watching the crazily pouring rain with bare arms, his face showed a hint of shock. It's too terrifying to see such fierce rain in the remote areas. I haven't seen such a terrible rainstorm on Earth. I hope there won't be a mudslide, otherwise it will cause a lot of trouble. There was a faint unease in Li Qing's heart. Ding-ling-ling. The peculiar crisp sound of bells suddenly rang. The sound was so crisp that it even penetrated the rainstorm. Upon hearing this voice, Li Qing's face turned pale. Ever since he found out that this world was suspected to be a world of cultivating immortals, he had been very nervous. This kind of world usually encounters some inexplicable things, and one mistake can lead to big trouble. The sudden ringing is clearly abnormal. My grass, my Tima won't be so unlucky, right? I've only been exposed to cultivation for 2 days now, so why did I come out of it all? Did I step on dog poop? So unlucky. Li Qing, whose face turned pale, was filled with resentment in her heart, as if she had offended some great deity. Chapter 6. 10,000 Categories of Frosty Sky Competition Freedom. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. In the heavy rain, the frequency of the bell ringing is accelerating, and a figure walks out of the rain towards the protruding canyon rocks. Li Qing took a breath and his body, which was already shivering in the rain, trembled slightly. An inexplicable fear is rising from the bottom of my heart. Don't come over. Don't come over. Feeling heartbroken, Li Qing's eyes flickered, only occasionally scanning the figure walking in the rain from the corner of his eye. An old man with gray hair, dressed in a blue robe, with a small golden bell hanging from his waist. At this point, he had already passed through the heavy rain and arrived at the sunken mountain wall of this canyon, where the protruding rocks sheltered him. Standing not far from Li Qing. Li Qing looked at his nose and heart, ready to rush into the heavy rain at any time. Just paying attention to the other person's figure with his spare light, if there is any behavior, he will run away as soon as possible. The air seems incredibly dull, even if the rain extinguishes the summer heat, it cannot break this strange dullness. The old man with white hair had no water on his body, and even his boots were not stained with any soil. His white hair was straight, and his face was covered in a white beard, exuding a fairy-like demeanor. Just as Yu Guang scanned slightly, Li Qing had already listed the other party as an extremely dangerous person. It's such a heavy rain that I don't get wet all over. No matter how you look at it, there's a problem. Time passed in the blink of an eye for a while, as if whispering softly. This rain will kill many people. Upon hearing these words, Li Qing was immediately wary and didn't say a word, as if she hadn't heard them. He is ready to run away, this old man looks very strange. Do you agree or not to come knocking on your door? A deep voice rang out again, and the old man seemed to be asking himself, and also seemed to be asking Li Qing. Li Qing's heart was pounding and he had already cursed in his heart. Mad, shouldn't you be none of my business? Don't come to me, don't come to me. Boss, I can't afford to play. Li Qing remained silent, looking at the tip of his nose as if there was a flower on it. It seemed that Li Qing didn't want to speak, and the old man didn't speak again. But his gaze was still fixed on the sky, as if there were some eerie flashes in his eyes. After an unknown amount of time, the rain never stopped, and Li Qing had already realized that it was abnormal. Such a massive rain is usually a thunderstorm, lasting for at most half an hour. It has been going on for at least 2 hours now. The rain never stopped, and there were even signs of it getting bigger and bigger. Li Qing's heart became increasingly worried, and he felt that it might be a big trouble. Is this rain related to this old man? Did someone come knocking on his door? Did someone bother him? That is to say, if he goes to solve it, it's possible that the rain will stop. Thinking of the 2 words the old man just said, Li Qing's heart became increasingly anxious. An inexplicable crisis enveloped his heart, and he always felt that continuing like this would cause great trouble. Mad, in the world of cultivating immortals, everything is so inexplicable. Thinking of this, he let out a deep breath and said, the old man suddenly appeared. If you can't find anyone, just find me. Perhaps he needs me to help him make some decisions. Or does he need someone to help him make decisions? Thinking rapidly in her mind, Li Qing's eyes showed a hint of surprise. Give it a try, if there's really a problem, run away immediately. Looking at the increasingly dark sky, Li Qing silently swallowed his saliva. Cough and cough, it's raining a bit heavily. Li Qing chuckled twice and looked at the old man with white hair, saying. The old man with white hair slowly turned his head and looked at him calmly, his eyes devoid of any emotion. It will rain even harder. These eyes have no emotion, as if he is facing a ruthless machine rather than a person. Li Qing felt a chill in his heart and continued, how did my father-in-law know that the rain would get heavier and heavier? The old man with white hair looked at the sky and said, I have a question for you. The old man did not answer Li Qing directly, but Li Qing felt relieved. The meat show is here. What does my father-in-law want to ask? Li Qing answered cautiously. If there is something in your family that is not useful to you, but useful to your descendants. Someone came to your house to demand this thing. The other party has strong strength, and you may not necessarily win in the battle. What would you do? Upon hearing these words, Li Qing's heart was moved. He had already roughly understood what the old man was asking. There are only 3 options, he pondered slightly. The first option is to hand over the things if you can't fight on your own. As for the descendants, it's up to them to have their own luck. The saying goes, children and grandchildren have their own blessings. However, this is just a fig leaf hung by the elders' incompetence. The second option is to have a draw, which not only preserves the things but also the future of the younger generation, while also forcing the other party to retreat. But if the other party is really determined to win, they will always come to trouble in every way possible. If they can protect for a while, they won't be able to protect for a lifetime. It depends on whether future generations can grow up before others' fatal blow. If you can grow up, you naturally have no fear. If you can't grow up, then you can only consider yourself unlucky and never recover. The third option is to directly defeat the opponent, kill them all, and leave no one behind. Although invincible foreign patience country will perish forever, no matter how bad it is, things are still in one's own hands. Without enemies, at least descendants will have no worries. All choices actually lie with the elders. Only by observing whether his elders have self-awareness and absolute rationality can they make the most correct choice. However, as the saying goes, step by step means there will eventually be a time when one cannot retreat. Today I am interested in treasures, but tomorrow I may be interested in the life of my whole family. After all, greed is infinite. As long as there is something attractive on one's body, one cannot escape the pursuit of greedy people. But all kinds of frosty weather are just free. Listening to Li Qing's faint words, the old man with white hair suddenly showed a hint of divine light in his eyes, and his entire aura changed dramatically. What a free competition in the frosty sky of all kinds. Throughout history, it has only been a struggle for words. A word from the young friend is truly enlightening. Meeting each other is fate, and this item is given to you. After speaking, the old man in the green robe saw a green jade plaque in his hand and casually threw it to him. Li Qing was in a hurry, grabbing the jade plaque with both hands, while the old man with white hair stepped out and disappeared into the rain. In an instant, the sky and the earth were dark, and the entire world was shrouded in infinite dark clouds. Roaming and rumbling. The terrifying thunder flickered in the sky, and in a faint moment, 2 huge figures were rolling. Li Qing took advantage of the thunder and lightning to vaguely see the huge figure flashing by in the sky. I wipe, is that a dragon? Is there a dragon in this world? Chapter 7. Hungry Belly, Daoist Friend Saves Life. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The 2 figures flickering in the thunder only flashed through the clouds, and Li Qing couldn't see them clearly. He shook his head slightly and looked down at the jade plaque in his hand. This jade plaque is very unique, a pure blue with a carved dragon painted on it. What's the use of this thing? A strange expression appeared on his face, and after thinking for a moment, he injected a hint of vitality. With the infusion of essence and temperament, the jade plaque suddenly underwent a transformation. The jade plaque lit up a faint blue light, and a message appeared in his mind out of thin air. Summoning Spirit Card. It can summon a dragon illusion, devouring souls and devouring souls. Li Qing's eyes lit up and he said, "Is this something like a magic weapon?" My heart was filled with passion. The most troublesome thing for him now is that he doesn't have many attack methods. If he encounters any jackals, tigers, or leopards, he might end up hanging up. Now that he had acquired something similar to a magic weapon, he suddenly felt a sense of security. Looking at the sky, the heavy rain seems to have suddenly begun to subside. The sky became bright, and Li Qing thought to herself, I don't know how the situation is, but I'll run away first. Never get involved in this kind of existence's struggle. He put away the clothes hanging next to him and rushed out with a flash. Rushing towards the other end of the canyon at lightning speed. The visible speed of the rain has weakened, and in the blink of an eye it has turned into drizzle. Half an hour later, the sky had returned to a scorching sun. Li Qing, who was running on the road, shook her head slightly and said, "This world is really strange. It was raining heavily just now, and now the sun is shining brightly on the ground. I hope there won't be any more trouble. My small body can't withstand a few accidents." Looking at the summoning card in his hand, "I need to find a place to test its power." Goo 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 goo. Suddenly, there was a cry of hunger in her stomach, and Li Qing's face was wrinkled like a bitter gourd. "I had 2 pieces of green melons in the morning. There's no place to eat on this road without going to the village or the restaurant." At this point, he had already crossed the canyon and was advancing on a mountain path. Qingshi County is located in Huanglong County, Beizhou. The county town is named Yucheng, which is a large city with a population of 1 million. There is a long river outside the city. The Pujiang River, which runs through the north and south, dividing the entire Tang dynasty in 2 halves. The distance between Qingshi County and Yucheng is about 300 miles, and Li Qing's goal is to go there. Yucheng has a population of 1 million, a very developed economy, and is also the commercial center and transportation hub of the entire Beizhou. It is backed by water transportation and is well connected in all directions. All kinds of mountain goods and natural treasures from the entire Beizhou were transported from here to the interior of the Tang dynasty. At this time, the mountain path he was on was Heifeng Mountain, a 300-mile area between Qingshi County and Yucheng, with a total of 1 canyon and 3 mountain peaks. Heifeng Mountain is the first mountain peak, and it is said that wild beasts roam here, often causing mysterious events. Li Qing walked alone very cautiously. Holding the spirit calling card tightly in his hand, he immediately summoned the dragon illusion in danger. The sky gradually darkened, and Li Qing felt a bit anxious in her heart. He hasn't eaten for half a day, and he's so hungry that his chest is pressing against his back. "I don't want to be so unlucky, I'll starve to death on the way." Suddenly, a dilapidated temple appeared ahead, and Li Qing's eyes lit up. But after thinking for a moment, he paused and said, "In ancient times, it was said that one should not enter the forest or the temple. Moreover, this is still a dangerous world, and there is a high probability of encountering trouble if you feel like going in." After some thought, Li Qing quickened his pace and quickly moved away from this dilapidated temple. From time to time, he would look back at the dilapidated temple. He only breathed a slight sigh of relief when the ruined temple completely disappeared from his sight. Fortunately, there was no ghost hitting the wall. "I won't fall for the old trick." At this moment, the sky became even darker and the road was a bit blurry. Li Qing's face changed and he said, "It seems we can only go hungry tonight. I can only stay in the tree." Thinking of this, his gaze turned to the nearby tree, and a big tree appeared in his eyes. As soon as my eyes lit up, I picked up a dead branch from the roadside and quickly scanned ahead. This is called striking the grass to startle the snake. Prevent a venomous snake from suddenly emerging from the grass and biting him. Quickly arrived at the big tree 3 zhang deep in the forest. He quickly climbed up and soon arrived at a branch of the big tree. His position is about 2 zhang high from the ground, and if he falls, it will be terrible. Looking left and right, Li Qing's face was somewhat helpless. "I may not be able to sleep tonight. I'm tired and hungry. If I fall asleep again, I'll really be looking for death." He held the spirit calling card in his hand and did not use it easily. Using this thing consumes energy, and he is not sure if he will lose strength after using it. There is no condition for him to try now, so he can only sigh and hold it in his hand. The dark forest always has the cries of some animals, and there is a little more vitality in the pitch black. As time passed, Li Qing couldn't help but feel a fear in the darkness. Faced with darkness, humans are naturally afraid. With nothing to do, Li Qing began silently reciting the scriptures of the essence and blood technique. The faint essence in the blood vessels began to circulate slightly, reaching the whole body, and a hint of warmth rose throughout the body. Li Qing could clearly feel that there was not much essence in his body, and the excess flesh seemed to be burning, transforming into essence and merging into his blood vessels. The characteristic of this technique is to transform all excess parts of the body into essence, nourishing specific organs of the body bit by bit. Reciting scriptures is just to divert attention and prevent Li Qing from excessive fear in this darkness. Time passed in a blink of an eye, and while Li Qing was silently reciting, her spirit slowly became somewhat erratic, as if she had entered a wonderful state. Sitting on thick branches, the body gradually relaxed but inexplicably maintained balance. The whole person fell into a wonderful state, as if in a trance. I don't know how long it has been, but a figure appeared on the road outside the forest. This person is staggering, emitting a strong smell of blood all over. He can clearly see a hole in his left chest, a sunken rib, from which countless blood flows. Wow! At this moment, he leaned against a tree and looked at Li Qing's position with a pair of eyes. A sinister smile appeared on his face, the blood refining technique. It's really a blood pill that heaven never dies for me. It's delivered to my door. He struggled to walk over, his body already weak to the extreme. We need to trick this guy out. At this moment, the clattering sound in the forest had awakened Li Qing. He quickly turned his head and looked in the direction where the sound came from. In this dense forest, I can hardly see my fingers. The visibility will not exceed 3 meters. A voice sounded under the tree, "Friend on the tree, can you save my life?" Chapter 8. Who is the prey? The dragon captures the soul. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Li Qing was startled by the sound and immediately looked down. In the blur, there seemed to be a figure, but he couldn't be sure what it was. He doesn't even intend to answer. Conquer the world, be careful, be careful, be careful again. Li Qing tried hard to watch, but remained silent. The person below couldn't help but frown. Why aren't you talking? In the darkness of his gaze, the darkness within a radius of 10 meters was incredibly clear, and he could see Li Qing clearly. Seeing the other person just looking at him with a confused expression on his face, his heart suddenly moved. Can't he see me? It seems like a guy who just practiced the blood refining technique. Thinking of this, I suddenly breathed a sigh of relief in my heart. That would be a better solution. He fumbled in his arms and pulled out a ball. This ball was taken out of a black pocket and immediately emitted a hazy white glow, illuminating an area several meters away. Daoist friend, I am seriously injured now and I need help. If Taoist friends can make a move, this night pearl will be considered as a thank that you gift. With the appearance of the night pearl, Li Qing saw a figure leaning against the big tree on the shining ground. The other person appeared very miserable in the light, with a big hole in their chest and visible bones. Can you still survive in such a miserable situation? This guy is definitely very powerful, he exclaimed in his heart. My vigilance rose again in my heart, and I looked at him with a cautious expression, not saying a word. In the radiance, this person had a big bearded face, looking at most in his 30s, with slightly pale skin and a pale complexion. The deep sunken eye sockets were like a tuberculosis ghost. Especially his lips, although covered with a big beard, seemed very bright red. The strange beard, although revealing its figure in the night pearl, made Li Qing even more vigilant. Li Qing suddenly said, "You. How do you want me to save you?" At this moment, Li Qing's face was full of hesitation and a hint of timidity. The bearded man below remained calm on his face, but in his heart he burst into laughter. "You come down, I have medicine in my arms. Can you help me apply it to the wound? I still have a fatal scar on my back. I can't apply it there myself. You practice the blood refining technique, and I also practice this skill. Naturally, we are allies. I know where to find the follow-up techniques of blood refining technique. When my injury stops, we can walk together and have care along the way. It looks like you haven't eaten yet, I still have some dry food in my backpack." Big Beard struggled and untied a package from his body. With difficulty, he opened it, revealing several xiaobing, baked cake and griddle, and a piece of beef inside. Daoist friend, please do me a favor and help my brother. At this moment, Big Beard looked at Li Qing sincerely with a hint of pleading in his eyes. But he didn't know when he said the blood refining technique. Li Qing has already completely placed him in the enemy's ranks, and he will not forget the fate of Mr. Huayu. Seeing the beef in his backpack again, even more spirits were rising. He won't forget the mutated Mr. Flower and Moon. He almost became the prey of the other party. This guy is so badly injured that he might mutate at any moment. Taking advantage of his illness to kill him, it's better to take action before he mutates. Li Qing looked at the package. The beef and xiaobing, baked cake and griddle, inside made him swallow saliva involuntarily. He looked very hungry. The bearded figure below showed a hint of inexplicable joy in his eyes. This guy must have practiced martial arts by chance, so he probably doesn't understand the art of cultivation at all. Judging from his appearance, he hasn't undergone any alienation yet. It shouldn't have been long since he was refined, and he hasn't eaten any meat or fish. Most likely it's a child from a poor family, hee. But as long as you practice the blood refining technique, you are my best supplement. It seemed like something was on his mind, and he couldn't help but swallow his saliva, feeling a hunger in his stomach. Li Qing hesitated for a moment, her face flickering with hesitation. The bearded man below felt like he needed to add another flame and quickly spoke loudly. Brother, you better hurry up. I was injured and that person is still chasing me. Maybe we'll catch up soon. You are also practicing the blood refining technique, and he will also keep an eye on you. I must recover as soon as possible before I can leave with you. Upon hearing these words, Li Qing's face immediately showed a look of panic. What? Someone else is chasing you. The person who hurt you. What should we do then? Hurry up and help me with treatment, I can take you away. Big Beard coaxed him with words, and his whole body seemed slightly excited. His voice seemed to become hoarse and strange. There was a slight bulge behind him, as if something was wriggling. He was completely unaware of it himself, and Li Qing's pupils shrank slightly, seeing the other person's changes. The panic on his face intensified, and it was unclear whether it was a performance or a real one. He quickly said, I'll come down right away. Li Qing's appearance was only a teenager of 15 or 16 years old. With a big beard, he couldn't help but smile as he looked at Li Qing climbing down from the tree. I really don't have much experience. Just coax and scare me, and I'll panic. Hee. At this moment, Li Qing was climbing down from the other side of the big tree, with big bearded eyes fixed on it. His body trembled slightly, and he was accumulating strength. As soon as Li Qing landed, he would pounce. Devour him completely and heal his own injuries. Just as Li Qing was halfway up the climb, he suddenly exclaimed in surprise. No, I'm stuck, I can't get down. Upon hearing this, Big Beard was momentarily stunned, and then a smile appeared on his face. Ha. I'll help you, don't move. Big Beard quickly struggled to get up, his dry lips cracked, his crimson tongue licked slightly, and his eyes were filled with bloodthirsty light. From the left side of the big tree, I walked around towards the back. When he came behind, a white light shone on a figure. The other person is lying on the tree trunk, holding a token in their right hand, and is currently looking at him. The token was filled with blue light, and in the next moment, an illusory blue dragon rushed out of it. With a flash, he rushed towards the Big Beard. Big Beard's face was horrified, and he immediately knew he had fallen for a trick. Where is a little lamb? It's clearly a wolf in sheep's clothing. His whole body was bleeding profusely, and a red light swung from his fists towards the blue dragon phantom. Moo! The blue dragon let out a roar like a cow or a dragon, and was about to swing its big beard. Its expression suddenly became confused, and the whole person stopped moving. The blue dragon flashed and pounced on him, dragging an illusory figure out of the opponent's body. Ah, what's going on? It hurts so much. It hurts so much. Chapter 9. Comes with fusion, heaven, earth, and human blood curse. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The phantom figure screamed mournfully, and Li Qing trembled slightly as he looked at it. That's not even human anymore. It's covered in tumors and has strange limbs. Pushi the illusory humanoid phantom was bitten into pieces by a dragon. After the dragon bit the phantom figure, it flew back to Li Qing's jade plaque in a flash. Li Qing sat on the ground, feeling weak and weak all over. He was panting heavily. All the remaining essence in his body has been exhausted. I can only use this thing once now. If it fails, I will die. At this moment, his gaze turned to the bearded man lying on the ground. With lifeless eyes and a high bump on his back, he looked lifeless. The body is shrinking at a visible speed, withering and quickly transforming into a terrifying corpse. Li Qing's mouth twitched when he saw this scene. This death is too tragic, isn't it? After breathing for a while, Li Qing walked over and poked the body with a branch. The body didn't react much, and the bulge on the back also didn't react. I think I should have died completely, he said with a slight sigh of relief in his heart. Li Qing started searching for the body, and soon all the bodies were cleaned up by him. In front of him was a skinny corpse. A huge shriveled sarcoma protruded on the back. This person should have been on the edge of alienation, but died before alienation. So alienation will also stop. Feeling lost in thought, Li Qing began to count his gains. A torn piece of clothing, a black package, containing 2 cakes and a piece of beef sauce, a kettle, and a night pearl. There is also a black token with big blood letters written on it, which symbolizes a certain identity. A money bag with 10 taels of silver coins inside. 10 taels of silver is enough to live for a period of time. However, what caught his attention the most were the 2 yellow books in the other person's hand. At this moment, his attention had already focused on the jade tablet in his mind. One of the books was already recorded at the moment of touch. Old version. Rongxue Ju, category. Ju 100-day foundation building, cultivation method. 9 types of spiritual essence and blood. Write a second blood curse, which can infuse one's own blood into one type of essence and blood, thereby obtaining a certain ability corresponding to life, strengthening the source, and completing the foundation. Talent skill. Burn blood and essence, and double all body abilities. Cost. 9 creatures that are inedible for life. Breaking the precepts will gradually alienate and become strange. The blood refining technique new version. Essence and blood technique, category. Technique for building a foundation in 100 days, cultivation method. Write your own essence and blood on your body with the 2 blood curses of improving heaven and earth, lock in and dissipate your essence, and complete the foundation building. Talent skills. 1. Bleeding. If any wound is touched by small surgical forces, the wound cannot heal and continues to bleed. 2. Burn blood and essence, and briefly increase all body abilities or other small skills by twice their abilities. Cost. None. 2 scriptures, one is the blood refining technique and the other is the blood melting technique, both of which are similar techniques that can be practiced to build foundations, but with slightly different effects. Does this guy practice both martial arts? However, these 2 martial arts were actually integrated together, and the effect of the jade tablet is really amazing. His face flashed with an inexplicable expression. That means I can practice this skill again. At this thought, he shook his head slightly and said, I don't have this condition now. Let's run away first. Li Qing didn't want to spend the night with a corpse, so she put the night pearl in her hand and put it in a black cloth bag. Carrying the package on his back, holding a large cake in his hand. While gnawing on the big cake and drinking cold water, I quickly crossed the dense forest and continued along the road. Li Qing walked at least 2 or 3 miles before stopping and found a big tree nearby to climb up. At this point, he had already eaten a big cake and half a piece of beef clean. I plan to take a good rest and regain some energy at the same time. Silently reciting scriptures, the food in my stomach slowly digests, transforming into waves of essence that flow throughout my body. In the blink of an eye, a few hours had passed in a daze, and the sky was bright and the sun had already risen. Li Qing also woke up from his meditation practice, flipped over and jumped down. At this point, the essence in his body seemed to have returned to its original state, and his physical abilities had significantly increased. Falling from a height of 5 meters, the footwall was stable, and the impact of gravity had almost no effect on him. With a flicker of contemplation in his eyes, when his energy is abundant, it seems that his physical abilities will increase significantly. Thinking of the remaining half of beef and a piece of cake in his backpack, he shook his head slightly. It's only enough for one meal, there are at least 200 miles left from the county town. Li Qing shook his head slightly, took out his food and walked along the mountain road, hoping to meet his companions or the post station on the way. At this point, he was completely lightly dressed and had already thrown away his package, 2 scriptures, and tokens. He doesn't want to bring obvious target items, after all, there are still people chasing that person. The night pearl was packed in a black pocket with a big beard and hidden in her tattered pocket, along with the silver. Walking on the mountain road, Li Qing has been pondering the brand new essence and blood technique. He found that the most important part of it was 2 different blood spells. One is called the Heavenly Blood Curse, the other is called the Earth Blood Curse, and a thought flashed through my heart. Is there still a human blood curse? The 3 talents of heaven, earth, and man. Is it the perfect foundation building technique? With thoughts in his heart, he felt that it was highly likely. Walking with both feet, Li Qing didn't walk fast, saving energy in trying to maintain his peak state. The scorching sun, now in the hot summer, although Li Qing has been walking in the shadows of the forest, the sun is still unbearable. He shook his head slightly, and a hint of heaviness appeared on his face. If it continues to be so hot, it won't be easy to walk for these 200 miles. There was no one passing by on the official road, at least so far. As she dodged and walked, in the blink of an eye, a morning had passed. Li Qing's legs and feet felt numb as she walked. I should have walked 30 or 40 miles. He has left Heifeng Mountain and walked on the flat ground leading to the next peak. Looking ahead exhausted, Li Qing had already finished drinking the kettle in his hand and was feeling a bit hungry and thirsty. Suddenly, a building ahead caught his attention. Red lanterns are hung on the building, with the words, "Post Station," written on them. A smile appeared on his face. Finally, there's a place to rest. I hope there's something to eat, otherwise I won't be able to persevere. I can only go to the forest to try my luck and see if I can catch some food. Li Qing smiled bitterly twice and walked forward. Wow! A huge sound echoed from behind. Chapter 10. Jianghu Veterans, Strange Sound of Yiliu. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Li Qing couldn't help but look towards the back. A cloud of smoke and dust came from behind, with 2 flags erected at the front. Jinsha Escort Agency. Travel the world. Seeing this scene, Li Qing's heart was filled with joy. Escort, maybe you can follow them later, maybe you can take a walk and buy some dry food. Li Qing walked with tired legs and quickly arrived at the station. At first glance, there were many people in the post station, at least 5 or 6. Divided into 2 tables, one of which consists of 3 strong men, looking powerful and powerful. A table was filled with a pair of young men and women, with sheathed swords on it. It looked like a practitioner wandering in the martial arts world. The man is handsome and charming, while the woman is beautiful and charming. She is about 20 years old and seems to be a pair of senior siblings. In addition to these 5 people, there is also a young clerk and a middle-aged shopkeeper. It doesn't look like a group, there shouldn't be much danger, Li Qing thought to herself just as he was about to enter. The guy had already shouted, "Hey, what are you doing? Beggars are not allowed inside. Stay on the side." The guy had already come up with a dark face to rush people. Li Qing was slightly taken aback, then remembered that he was in tattered clothes, unlike a wealthy person. It was normal for others to drive him away. He raised his hand and said, "Slow down, look what this is." After speaking, he had already found a piece of broken silver in his hand, at least one coin worth 101. Upon seeing it, the waiter's expression immediately became impatient and respectful. "Oh, my guest, I'm sorry. I have a cheap mouth and don't know the true Buddha. Please come inside." Li Qing casually threw the silver at him and said, "Here are some good dishes. Fill me with a kettle. Do you have any old clothes here? I'll buy a whole outfit. Is one coin of silver enough?" "Enough, there's still room left. I'll give you the rest. Go and get it done for me now." The waiter quickly nodded and guided him to sit in a corner. Quickly serve him a pot of coarse tea and said with a smiling face, "Sir, please take your time." Li Qing nodded and waved his hand casually, "All right. Pour a pot of tea. The yellow tea is still refreshing, although it doesn't have much tea aroma, it is enough to quench thirst." However, Li Qing did not drink it. As a traveler, he had read too many stories. Many black shops specialize in robbing passers-by. He is carefully observing the people at the other two tables, while also waiting for the escort agency outside. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of the wheels crushing the ground sounded, and a group of carriages had already arrived outside. Li Qing looked carefully and saw that there were at least 10 strong young men in this team. The leader is a middle-aged man who appears to be around 40 years old, at least 7 feet tall, with strong muscles visible to the naked eye. He holds a 5-tiger broken door knife in his hand, has a goatee on his chin, and his eyes sparkle with shrewdness. The middle-aged man walked in with 2 subordinates and spoke loudly. "Waiter, 50 mantou, 2 jin of braised meat and a pot of herbal tea." As soon as the waiter heard this, he quickly welcomed him and said, "Sir, please take a seat." The escort leader and 2 subordinates sat over, and the young men, women, and 3 sturdy guests all looked at the escort. The post station suddenly became somewhat quiet, and the waiter had brought tea and placed it on the table of the escort. The escort poured tea and did not drink it. Instead, he took out a silver needle and inserted it into the tea. At the same time, the silver needle also circled around the teacup. After finishing, his gaze turned to the next driver. The other party actually took out a palm-sized mouse cage from their sleeve, which contained a small mouse. He placed the tea in front of the little mouse, and the mouse quickly walked over, sticking out its tongue and drinking the tea. Li Qing, who was watching this scene on the side, suddenly widened her eyes and said, "Let me wipe it. This is a biological test. Are these people too advanced?" Undoubtedly one who travels the world, this is cautious and impressive. Li Qing couldn't help but exclaim, "I also have to be careful in the future." After about a moment, the waiter walked out with a food box and quickly came to Li Qing's desk, serving him 3 dishes. A plate of stir-fried vegetables, a plate of braised meat, a bowl of vegetable soup, and a bowl of white rice seemed to be the best food at this post station. There is also a kettle filled with clean water. Looking at the dishes in front of him, although disappointed in his heart, Li Qing could only accept them. After all, this kind of food is already good in this remote and impoverished area. However, Li Qing did not move his chopsticks, he just waited quietly. The waiter is also serving dishes to the 2 tables across from them. The young men and women seem to have also tested the poison with silver needles, and the 3 robust men did the same. Everyone has rich experience, but compared to him, Li Qing is quite strange. At this moment, the waiter quietly walked over and brought a set of grey clothes. "Sir, I have an old set of clothes here. Would it suit you?" Li Qing took the clothes, which were washed very clean. Although they were very old, they were not damaged and could cover the body. Smiling and nodding, "Not bad, thank you." Upon hearing Li Qing's gratitude, the waiter's face showed a faint smile. "Thank you very much. Yiliu." A deep, saliva-sucking voice sounded, but Li Qing was surprised in his heart. Suddenly turning his head to look at the waiter, he had a smile on his face and flattery in his eyes, but Li Qing always felt that his smile was a bit off. "Sir, do you have anything else to do?" Li Qing shook his head and said, "It's okay." The waiter quickly smiled and walked towards the back hall, while Li Qing's heart became increasingly uneasy. Just now, he clearly heard the sound of sucking saliva, like the sound of something flowing out saliva and then sucking it back. This kind of sound is very much like a delicious food in front of me, an unbearable feeling. He felt a chilling sensation in his heart, involuntarily looking left and right. His gaze turned to the shopkeeper, who was fiddling with an abacus behind the counter, holding a brush in his hand as if writing something. From beginning to end, the shopkeeper seems to have never looked up. Upon careful observation, Li Qing suddenly felt a chill on his spine as he saw something wriggling around the neck of the shopkeeper. Upon closer inspection, it appears to be a chubby white maggot, rolling and landing on the table behind the counter. A cool breath rushed from the soles of her feet towards her forehead, and Li Qing stood up with a brush. "Damn it, did I hit a ghost? It's so unlucky. How did you encounter such a strange thing again? Is it really like what some novels say?" Li Qing's face changed in uncertainty. Mastering the mysterious power will constantly attract mystery. This is too exaggerated, isn't it? Thinking of this, he suddenly patted the table. "Oh no, I dropped something." He grabbed the water bag and clothes, and walked towards the outside. His face was restless, as if he had really lost something.